Hey, beautiful soul. You're listening to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast, your weekly dose of fertility wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach. This is your go-to podcast for all things to naturally nourish your fertility, embody womb healing, and reclaim your feminine power to accelerate your path to pregnancy. My expert guests and I will be having intentional conversations to discuss the many facets of a thriving, fertile foundation, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as women on our journey to motherhood. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. In this episode, I'll be talking with Beth Wood, a mentor and guide for women looking to thrive in both life and business without sacrificing their health or femininity. With nearly a decade of experience in personal and business development, Beth combines somatic coaching, cycle syncing, and gentle business strategy to help women break free from burnout and hustle culture. Her approach honors the unique biology, energy, and rhythms of being a woman, creating a path to success that feels nourishing and aligned. So whether you're in business or not, this episode is still for you. I promise you, all of these things are still relevant through the fertility lens. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing how our bodies as women are just hardwired differently than men, how stress can affect our bodies, and why women thrive in a rested state, and the benefits of cycle syncing. So welcome, Beth. I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff. So any excuse I have is the best. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yes. So right off the bat, what's coming through my mind here is I feel like as women in this day and age, we are so much in our masculine state.
Yeah.
I know I am guilty of this myself. I have evolved a bit, but it is still easy to go back into those patterns. So I would love to really touch on what is the difference in how we are hardwired from men.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing I like to start with is you don't have a masculine side. You are at your core feminine literally, if we start to look at embryology, by day, depending on what you're looking at, by about day 9, we get a testosterone surge, and that dictates if we are male or female. So from the get-go, we have either male or female formatting, if you want to call it that. So our blueprint down to our anatomy and our brain chemistry, the actual architecture of our brain, the physiology, absolutely everything about us is female. And so while we have emotions are a human experience, the way that we relate to those it's going to be through our feminine lens, through the way that we perceive the world, which ultimately is it safe for me to be a female? That's how we filter absolutely everything in our lives. Is it safe for me to be a female, and is it safe for me to reproduce? So just on a purely biological level, that's all we're looking at. And that's like almost too simple. And that freaks a lot of people out because they're like, no, because there's all these other things. And yes, in higher levels of consciousness, that is true. But if you look at a deer outside, her only goal in life is to be mated and reproduce and survive, right? That's it. But to survive, her purpose in survival is to reproduce. So if we were to really drill it down to something that simple, that's it. It's to become pregnant. For a male, it is to impregnate. So if you take it to that simple of a level, then we can expand upon that. So if that's the foundation, the male, the masculine, and we can look at this both from an energetic, which is masculine, feminine, and also from a biological, male and female. The masculine is all about penetration. It's all about expanding territories, going out and seeking. It's all about inserting itself. And it's all about the drive, the go, the focus, the target, right? The feminine is all about receiving. If we look at this down to the anatomy of our bodies, we're all about receiving. We're about opening. We're about expanding. We're about expanding through being soft. If you think about it, and I always like to take this in the case of birth. If you are going through a contraction and you're tensing up, that's going to make that contraction worse. As you relax into it, that allows your body to open and let baby pass through. So everything in nature echoes itself. So we can look at the blueprinting of our biology and understand how we work on the energetic as well. So masculine and feminine, male and female, are two poles. They're two opposing poles that work synergistically together. Male, female, masculine, feminine, light, dark, all of it. That is one of the principles of nature. One of the laws of nature is polarity. And so we represent the feminine core, the feminine pole. Men represent the masculine pole in our anatomy. It's down to the density of our bones. Like we can literally take this down to the most minutiae detail and see that, because as above, so below, as without, so within. What is happening on the microcosm is happening in the macro, and vice versa. And so we can see these echoes all throughout nature, all throughout our experiences as women, and it just goes on and on. So that's the foundation that I like to look at, is we are two beautiful, synergistic. We came into this world in an embedded context to work together in union. And when we have union, that's when life is created. That's when results happen. You have sperm and an egg, that's when a baby is made. You have light and dark, that's when we have a day, right? You have all of these things when we have opposing forces come together in unity. That is when results are created. That is when life happens. So we have to make sure that what we're not doing is removing ourselves, basically dismembering ourselves from our feminine and operating in a masculine, because it throws off the polarity. And then we're like, why can't I get pregnant? Probably that, because you're not actually operating from your female. You're trying to be what you are not. And so the body's, I don't know what to do. So it's really interesting when you start to see this in the context of fertility. If we're operating from our masculine or the masculine, we're trying to emanate or animate a masculine most of our lives. And then all of a sudden we're like, we want to be super female. Our bodies are like, what? You want to have a baby now? You've been telling me that you're not safe to be female because you've been operating in a masculine way. And now you want to have a baby. So it gives us this whiplash, and then we get frustrated. And then that tells our body we're stressed, and it creates this vicious cycle. So it makes sense if we simplify it, actually, quite a bit.
Yeah, I've never really had anyone talk about it down to the biological level, like to the cellular level, which obviously makes so much sense. And yeah, what you were just saying there about you're so much in your masculine and then you want to reproduce and do what's really feminine. In one of my mentors, she talks about it as like a pendulum, is you're just so much on one side and then you want to go over on the other side.
And then in postpartum, you expect yourself to go right back to masculine. It's like, how quick can we wrap this up and get back to what I was doing, which is not how our bodies were designed at all. They were designed to be in that for a very long time. So yeah, it does. It becomes this whiplash thing with the pendulum swing.
Absolutely. And just thinking of the postpartum part, just because I'm a mother and I've gone through that, like society doesn't help either. When it's like you have 6, maybe 8 weeks off, and then you have to go back to work and all
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, just going back to the feminine is meant to receive, like I like to think of it as we're meant to receive the seed from the masculine to
Mhm.
fertilize the egg
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
So we talked about that down to the biological level, the energetics of it a little bit, but what does that mean in like more practical term, like tangible terms for the listeners? Like how could that show up and how they're leading in their daily lives? And it's what's coming through in my mind is almost you're leading your life out of alignment, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of straying away from that feminine core that we should.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we know when we're out of that alignment? Using our 4-step restorative fertility framework, we will 1, reveal the physical and energetic root cause. 2, we will remove the barriers to you conceiving and carrying a pregnancy to term. Number 3, we will rebalance the physical and energetic body with bio-individual strategies. And number 4, receive. You will nourish the mind, body, and spirit so you can receive baby. I have 3 one-on-one spots, and this is for the woman who is ready to claim her fertility back. She's ready to step back into her power. She is ready to do what it takes to finally get pregnant. If you want to learn more about this, find me on Instagram at the_wellness_pharmacist. My Instagram is going to be in the show notes.
One of the easiest ways to know is, do you feel happy or not? That's honestly one of the simplest things. So one of the biggest misunderstandings is, I'll context this first. For men, they need to be initiated through the external in order to rise up in different levels of their development. From a brain chemistry perspective, from a hormonal perspective, this is why we have rites of passage in every culture on earth. Men have to be externally initiated into that next level of themselves. Women are internally initiated. We have our menarche, we have our pregnancies, we have menopause. We are constantly initiated all by ourselves. So we don't need this whole story that a lot of women collude with, which is that we have to show that we can do it and we have to push through the really hard thing in order to say, look, we did it, we're worth it. We are, and again, we can take this to the biological. This is why I love looking at biology, because it grounds these sort of like more energetic things that we're not really sure how to make sense of. Females come into this planet. Again, we can take this to the beautiful doe, the deer, right? We can take it down to that. She comes into this world. As soon as she is born biologically valuable because she can carry and produce. She can reproduce. Males are expendable crewmen from a biological standpoint, okay? They are quantity over quality. And this is beautiful. We need this. But what happens is, when women think that there's a lot of worth stuff that happens with women. And a lot of that is because they don't understand that they are inherently valuable. I believe all humans are inherently valuable, but from a biological perspective, we think that we have to push through the things and continuously prove our worth over and over and over, and we don't have to. And when we're in that consistent proving, we tend to make ourselves very, very, very sick, because our master neurochemical is something called oxytocin. So oxytocin is basically the queen of hormones for the female body, and it's our bonding hormone. A lot of women are familiar with this, especially if we're talking about fertility and birth. Oxytocin is what is released when you're cuddling your baby, you're breastfeeding, eye contact, social connection with other women and men. But specifically when we're like verbally processing, we get a lot of oxytocin. And that is literally what dictates the hormonal rhythm and consistency and health of all of the other hormones in our body. So if you are not having oxytocin regularly, which is essentially the follow your bliss movement, that's like an immature version of it. If you are not consistently filling yourself up and giving from an overflow of, I feel nourished, I feel happy, I'm on purpose, I know where I'm going. If that's not happening and you don't have this, again, emanation is a really good word of the nourished woman that you can't help but be near. You see her in a room in a gathering of people and you're like, she just has something. She's just cool. She's like magnetizing to me. That is a woman in her fullness, which is dictated on a really grounded level by your oxytocin. Your oxytocin is the thing that's going to dictate if your estrogen levels are healthy, if your testosterone levels are healthy, all of that. And the thing that we need to look at is, in men, adrenaline, testosterone, and cortisol work synergistically. It creates a positive feedback loop in a male body. So when they get stressed, their bodies are like, all right, let's do the thing. Let's figure it out. And then it becomes a challenge reward cycle where they meet a challenge, they get rewarded. They get this beautiful hormonal cocktail that's like, you did the thing, you pushed through it. For women, we don't get that. It's a very different situation. When we feel safe and we feel rested, that's when we get it. That's the positive feedback loop for us as women. So one of the easiest ways to tell if you're operating from your masculine is if you're like grumpy and short and you don't feel happy and you don't feel like what your purpose is and you're struggling with your worth and your value and all of these different things. The estrogen, oxytocin, those things nourish us deeply as women. And if we're in cortisol, like high cortisol, high dopamine, high testosterone, all that, if we're in that like super high stress state, it tells our bodies to turn off non-essential processes, which is digestion and fertility. It's not safe to make a baby and it's not safe to eat the food. You just need to run away from the cheetah, right? If we're an antelope, just run away. So when we have oxytocin, that's our body saying, hey, you're good. You've got the masculine protection around you. There's nothing that can harm you, right? So you're protected and you're provided for from the masculine because we receive. And when that happens, we're safe. And when we feel safe, we know that we are safe to be female and we can reproduce. So it's like this big old misunderstanding that we have gone super boss babe and it has wrecked a lot of women's health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes so much sense too, because when we are so stressed, that cortisol and just the blood sugar dysregulation, like
Mhm.
all of those things are going to have downstream effects. And it is
Mhm.
all about filling your cup up and making
Mhm.
sure that you're nourishing yourself. And I always say it's if you're on a plane, you have to put your oxygen
Right.
mask on first
Yep.
before helping others. And
Mhm.
I think that in the fertility phase, it is important to really get into that habit of nourishing yourself because once you become a mom, it is so easy to forget
Mhm.
that and then you can lose yourself in the process and find yourself in that out of aligned state where
Mhm.
you're feeling burnt out and easily irritated and things like that. Because believe me, I can I
Mhm.
can attest to that from firsthand. Like
Mhm.
really, really have to make sure that I mean, like you were saying, the oxytocin comes from connection and things that bring you joy and embrace and safety and just
Mhm.
so many of those things.
Yeah. And two, self-care is not probably what most women think self-care is, right? Self-care is not spa days. It's not sleeping. Self-care is not sleeping. Women actually are natural nappers. So if we look at I bring in anthropology in everything that I do. If we look at most indigenous cultures, women are more likely, we all know if you've got a little one, you're like on high alert. Your brain is never fully settled when you're sleeping because you're listening for little one. Again, your brain architecture is different than a man's. Your brain is more symmetrical than a man's. A man's is more asymmetrical, which gives you the ability to have the two hemispheres of the brain in heightened communication at all times. So what that means is that you are constantly like you're in your emotional, you're in your intellectual, you're making sure that you're aware of all of the things around you, you're listening for littles, you're a master at multitasking. So when what actually gets us hung up is the stories that we collude with about what it means to be a good female and a good mom. That's what gets us hung up. It's our stories around it and the judgments we have around our natural way of working, not actually how we behave most of the time. So, what I
Mhm.
see a lot of women get hung up on is like, why doesn't my husband wake up in the middle of the night when I'm waking up? He's not designed that way. You are. Why I'm supposed to do all of the things and I have to do it at all times and I have to watch all of the things but I'm not supposed to multitask because that's not good for me. Actually, you're designed to multitask. That's a great thing. Like I can't work because if I'm working that takes me out of my feminine, that means I'm masculine. Nope, it's how you work, not what you're working. There's so many misunderstandings and when we judge those things, we're like I can't do this, I should do this, I shouldn't do that. That's what gets you in some really hot water because then we're resentful of everything and that siphons our energy and that siphons our vitality. So
Mhm.
that's why I bring in somatic work around everything because most women have no control over their thoughts and they don't understand that their thoughts are the thing dictating their emotions. And so they have no emotional mastery. So they end up indulging in all of their emotions and reactivating a fight or flight response in their systems over and over and over because they are ruminating on emotions. Women's biggest tool is knowing how to be masterful of their emotions and take them as feedback, not as truth. That is one of the best things you can do because it creates space. So when you've got your little one over there having a meltdown and you're like, this is the sixth time today, and I've got a newborn and I'm going to lose my mind, your mastery of being able to create space between the event and your reaction will change how you mother. And that will inherently allow you to be a more calm, healthy, nourished mom that has oxytocin that's, oh, little one needs nurturing and connection. I can do that. And guess what? That's actually positive feedback for me too. When I go over and I just hug them, that's actually better. So it changes the entire paradigm around how you mother or work or whatever when you understand that most of it is the stories we're colluding with around what society says we should or should not do as women.
Mhm. So what you were saying about ruminating thoughts, that is like so common in the fertility journey. So many
Yeah.
things I know from personal experience and just with my clients. So
Mhm.
you were mentioning your somatic work
Mhm.
with your clients. I would love to hear a little bit more about that and what it
Mhm.
looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of what other piece I wanted to say. If I think of it, I'll come back to it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
somatic.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it was the mastery
Mm.
talking about the mastery to be able to take the thoughts as feedback.
Yeah. Okay. So To ground what somatics is, because this has, again, recently become a very hot topic and people are like, I'm a somatic. Okay, somatic literally just means the living body in its wholeness. So a yoga practitioner can be a somatic therapist or a somatic practitioner. A naturopath can be a somatic doctor, right? We're working with the whole body, the fullness of the human body and the human experience. So the method I use was initially created by Alyssa Nobriga. She's a therapist, but she developed a model called SEMBU. So each letter stands for something. So S stands for somatic, and then you have emotional, mental, behavioral, and unconscious. So the idea here is that we're touching on all areas of the human experience. And so what basically happens is your subconscious mind houses your beliefs, your patterns, and your programming. Then your subconscious mind dictates your thoughts. These are largely automatic. And then your thoughts dictate, they basically transform into energy, which is emotion, right? That's that your thoughts then dictate your emotion. And then your emotions inform your nervous system to either respond or adapt to a stressor. So your beliefs are actually the thing running the show. And your beliefs are set in place when you are, usually it's under 8 years old. They can then be solidified as you get older with more and more repetitive situations that kind of firm up that belief as you get older. And those are what then are dictating your thoughts. So a lot of people who have, oh, I have intrusive thoughts. Okay, your thoughts are just the reflection of the beliefs that you're holding. If we change the beliefs, the thoughts will change, and then the emotions will change. And then your emotions, when you do have an emotion, it's a feedback mechanism. It's, oh, I'm feeling really angry about this thing. Why am I feeling so angry about this thing? But not just asking why, listening to the thought that happens just before the emotion. So a lot of the times we will, and this is where the judgments come in. I'm not supposed to work because that means I'm going to be in my masculine. We have that thought and then we get really angry and okay, now I'm angry and also I'm scared because I don't know how I'm going to provide for myself because I'm a single mom. So what the heck am I supposed to do? And then you end up in like crippling anxiety because you have a thought that says you're not supposed to be working because that's going to take you out of your masculine. So you have competing desires. Okay, so now I'm at war with myself. Hello, autoimmune. So what happens is the belief systems, when we change the belief systems, it becomes a ripple effect. It changes everything down that whole cascade. So that's why I like this model, because sometimes it's hard to get to the unconscious or the subconscious, same thing. It's hard to get to that place because we have a lot of guard up, a lot of it. Like for me, I was like, you're not going emotional and you're not like, I feel safe in my mental state. I feel safe being an intellect. So I'm going to stay there. But to get to the unconscious doesn't feel safe. So depending on my client who's in front of me and what they're needing and what's coming up for them in the moment, we never push you past your own evolution. So if you are like, I'm not comfortable going with my emotions yet, totally fine. Are you comfortable going into the body? Can we sense what's there? Nope. Okay, great. Let's hang out in mindset for a little bit. So my goal with my clients is to hit on all of those and create mastery in every area. Because then, oh, if I'm having this thought, it's because there's a belief. Or maybe I'm just continuously having this emotion. Is that just habitual? Is that just what I'm expecting to feel? Therefore, I'm projecting it into my future? Maybe. So it creates an actual full picture rather than just trying to do the mindset work and beat yourself with a mantra every single morning in the mirror. That doesn't really work. That's all intellect, which is 5 to 7% of your brain. That's not really going to do much to all of this beautiful stuff back here that's 95% of your brain. So that's somatic work. The way that I view it is it's actually the entire body. It's somatic, emotional, mental, behavioral, and unconscious.
Amazing, amazing. So I want to make sure that we hit on cycle syncing because I feel like this is a really beautiful piece that can be helpful for the fertility phase. And you had also mentioned how it works for pregnancy as well. So let's just say we're a woman in our reproductive years. Like, what is cycle syncing? What does that look like? What are the benefits?
The benefits are endless. What it looks like is women have something called an infradian rhythm, which is a 28-day hormonal cycle, and that's our primary body clock, whereas men have a 24-hour hormonal clock, which is essentially, it's the same thing as your sleep-wake schedule. It's your circadian rhythm. So they only have this 24-hour sleep-wake cycle. So they have all of the hormone that they need. They get a ton of testosterone first thing in the morning. You're familiar with like morning wood. That's what that is. They have all of the hormone that they need for that day, and they wake up the same every single day in and day out. They have a ton of testosterone in the morning. By about 5, 6 p.m., that's when their testosterone tank has like depleted for the most part. They're pretty tired. They're ready to go to bed, or they're ready to just chill in front of the TV. They do the same thing every day. Same thing. They're very predictable. Women are very predictable as well over the course of 28 days. So we have 4 distinct seasons that we go through every month. Most people know them as your menstrual phase, which is your when you're bleeding, your follicular phase, and then your ovulatory phase when you're ovulating. A lot of fertility women know that, okay, ovulation, and then your luteal phase. These are also seasons. So your menstrual phase is an inner winter. It has all the same principles and energetics of winter. Your follicular phase is spring. Your ovulatory phase is summer. And then your luteal phase is autumn. And so what you can do is you can apply principles to all 4 of those seasons in order to thrive throughout the month. So what this looks like is you can predict in your menstrual phase, you're going to be tired. You're going to have a lot more introspective energy. You are going to be, your sensitivity is heightened. So you're like, your literal hearing, your eyesight, all of that in your late luteal into your menstrual phase, all of that heightens, which is what makes us like agitated. So if we know this, we can plan for it. We can make sure we've got somebody who can watch the littles, or we can make sure that we've done a deep clean in our like early luteal phase so that all of the little specks of dust aren't driving us crazy. Or there's so many different ways. Like I have a whole course on this because it totally, I mean, there's a million different things you can do depending on what your life circumstances are. But the idea is for many women, birth is the first time they recognize the power of their bodies and the depth of their inner strength, of the magic of their design, the way they are cyclical, the way they are seasonal. But with cycle syncing, the opportunity is that that journey doesn't have to wait until birth. And we can connect with this wisdom every single month through the menstrual cycle, which in a very real sense trains us for the marathon of pregnancy and birth because it grounds us into our rhythms. It helps us understand how to apply those principles. If it's a dark winter and it's hard, we learn how to be with that every single month. It's phenomenal. So then when you get to pregnancy, the first trimester of pregnancy is spring. It's a time of new beginnings. Your energy is fluctuating. Your body's adapting to nurturing this new little person. And it's excitement mixed with introspection, and you're grounding yourself while you're adjusting to change. So there's a lot of variability, very similar to your follicular phase. So as you are practicing cycle syncing, it then is a copy paste structure to apply when you're pregnant. So it's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have a ton of morning sickness. I don't know if I'm going to have energy. Maybe I'm going to want to go see people. Maybe I'm going to want to sleep all day. I don't know. Good news, you've been practicing this whole time with your follicular phase. So you actually know how to deal with this, and you know what the gifts and the challenges are. So you can be with it. You don't have to judge it. You don't have to be like, why don't I have energy? I feel so annoyed because I want to do the things. You are able to be with it and see the value of it. Same thing, second trimester, that's your inner summer. It's, oh, I feel like human again. I'm blossoming. There's like this
So
whole
true.
sense of, I feel like I know who I am again. And you're like, oh, it's fun to be pregnant. Again, barring big medical things. It's like fun to be pregnant. You're glowing. You are the most external. So your energy is going back out into the world after this kind of like hibernation thing that was happening in the spring. You're like, I'm ready to see people. I look cute. I love my little belly. I'm glowing. It's summer energy. Then you have your third trimester is autumn. So you're like, okay, I'm starting to come back into myself. Your attention to detail, your senses are heightening again. So you're like, I need to nest. I need to make sure that everything is ready for this baby. And you have that so that you can prepare for the incoming energy drop. It's for you. Like in your luteal phase, that is there so that you can prepare your space and prepare your food and prepare your family so that you can take a little bit of a break. It's there for you. It gives you this little burst of energy. Then in your postpartum, that's winter. So it's like you're regenerating your mineral stores. You are bonding with your new little baby. You're learning a new version of you, and you're learning this new little person. It needs to be, you have to be introspective. You have to be, that energy needs to stay close because it's really important, potent energy for you and your little one. So it all echoes itself. So it's literally just we go through these same 4 phases over and over and over, and we have a larger version of that in our lives overall as women. We have the maiden, mother, queen, crone experience, right? So maiden is our first menarche, and then we have our mother and our queen, and then we have our crone phase, which is when we go through menopause. So we have the same seasons, same thing in motherhood. When you have young children, you're in a spring. It's very unpredictable. You're like, I don't really know what's happening. As they get a little bit older, you steady, you stabilize. Then they leave the nest and you're like, okay, things are slowing down a little bit. I'm coming back to myself. What do I want to do going forward? Like you go through these same cycles over and over and over. And by cycle syncing, you are training yourself. You are leaning into your natural design so that you can thrive no matter the season.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard of pregnancy being broken down into the seasons like that. It is so
Fun.
true. Like
Yeah.
it's almost hilarious, like how true that is. Like the second, for me at least personally, the second trimester was like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
like a human, I can do human things. And then postpartum is definitely the winter phase, and it really is. It's just a practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be perfection every month or for every season. It's just a journey and a learning process and a really beautiful way, I think, to connect to yourself and your body and really get to know how you are in each
Mm-hmm.
season. And honestly, sometimes it shifts too. You're still, I think for me, my menstrual phase is definitely still very much the winter, but some months I'm like, I just want to be cozy in this bed. And sometimes in my menstrual phase, I'm like, hey, I might do like a 5 minute weight workout or something like
Mm-hmm.
how you
Yep.
feel. And like you said, preparing for each
Yeah.
phase and just
Yeah.
getting things lined up so you can feel supported in whichever phase.
Exactly. And I think a lot of women don't realize that their menstrual phase is not supposed to be something where it feels like you're not supposed to be in a deep, dark ice age. You're supposed to be like, I want to just go a little slower. I work out my entire cycle.
Mhm.
I eat pretty normally my entire cycle. The difference is you're naturally more, I'm just a little bit quieter. I'm just a little bit. So a lot of women think, again, if we go back to that like pendulum thing, when we have these really dramatic shifts from place to place or from season to season, that's not how it is in nature. We always can apply nature. That's not how it is in nature. In nature, we have transition seasons. So your follicular transitions you from winter to summer. Your luteal transitions you from summer back to winter. So
Mhm.
they should be gentle shifts. If you're noticing like I'm dead for 3 days for my menstrual phase, that's a heads up that something's going on in your body. Most likely it's emotional. That's like a conversation for another time. But the veil between the spiritual realm and the physical realm, the two hemispheres of your brain, whatever you want to call it, is very, very thin in your luteal and your menstrual phase. This is why things come up because they're pushed in. We have this thing called metacognition, where the subconscious pushes things into the conscious mind in order to release what no longer serves us. That happens in the luteal phase so that we can release it in our menstrual phase. If you have really emotional, tumultuous, like PMS stuff, that's an indication that your body is trying so hard to let things go, and our judgment is what hangs on to them. So it's not supposed to be this dramatic whiplash. It should, and we're using should with air quotes here, it should be a gentle transition from one thing to the next where you're like, oh, this feels a little cooler. I'm going to put on a jacket. It's not supposed to be like this huge dramatic shift that makes you feel like you don't know what to expect day to day. That is your body telling you, like, hey, something is awry. We need to take a look, right? Because emotions, symptoms, it's feedback. If you're having big, big symptoms, it's feedback. Your body's trying to tell you something because the only way it can talk to you is through symptoms. It's a beautiful system. We just have to listen.
100%. And I think for me personally, and sometimes I can see this in my clients, is if we are leaning too much in the masculine in the earlier parts of our cycle, that's when you really crash and burn in your.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, like just feeling dead to the world for
Yeah.
or just like want to burn
Yeah.
everything down. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. And in contrast, like your luteal phase, I get the majority of my business, all of my work done in 2 weeks, and it's in my luteal phase. I take 3 or 4 days off for my period every single month, and I have for years. This is why, if we talk about the business thing, like corporate America was designed for male biology. You
Mhm.
cannot fit a square peg in a round hole. You can't. You can do certain things to mitigate the stress for your system, but ultimately, that's not designed for female biology. You can still thrive in that. You just have to understand how. Entrepreneurship works really well because for women, you can create something that works for you. You can create a whole new system. So I literally get the majority of my work done 2 weeks out of the month. And then I have 2 other weeks where I'm super social. And so that's when I have all of my client calls or I have my groups or my workshops or whatever. And then I get to take time off for my period when I need to. And it works flawlessly. And I've been doing it for 10 years. It's
Mhm.
amazing. So there's always a way to work with your biology, not against it. We just have to know what your biology is because most women don't even know. So that's like step number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like everyone definitely got a crash course on that.
Yeah, it's a lot of information.
Oh, it's amazing. I love it. So I know you have a couple of freebies for the listeners if you want to share about those.
Yeah. Okay. So number one is I have Cycle Syncing 101, which is a workshop replay that I did. And that is totally free. I think it's over an hour long and it goes through all of the cycle syncing stuff in more depth. So that's a really good place to start. From that point, I do have a whole course on all of this that talks about if you're a corporate girly, if you have your own business, if you're a mom, how do you apply all of this? But then the other thing that I love to offer, because I am a huge believer in just serving as much as humanly possible. So I offer free clarity sessions, which are 60 minutes of somatic coaching to get you started on your next steps, your clarity, whether that's something with me or something else entirely. It's literally what is your body telling you you need? What is the support that you need? And how can you start to take action towards that? And so that's my favorite because I just get to connect and I get to hold space. And it's not a sales call at all. It's literally like coaching for free for 60 minutes. So that's one of my favorite things to offer, just to serve women and pay it forward.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And let everyone know where they can find you, learn more, and connect with you.
Yes, Rosewood Woman everywhere. So woman is WOMAN. So it's at Rosewood Woman on Instagram. It's at Rosewood Woman on Facebook, which I'm not really on a ton. Rosewoodwoman.com. And then I also have a podcast called the Freely Feminine Podcast that kind of takes everything that all of the ways to be free as a woman. So we talk on more of the taboo stuff and things that Instagram wouldn't love me to talk about as much. So that's my other place.
Amazing. I didn't know you had a podcast.
Yeah, I forget to talk about it.
Did you have it when you filled out the form?
Yeah, I think so. I've had it
Okay.
for a little while. Yeah, it's I think of it almost more as a hobby. So it's
Mhm.
something that like it generates a lot of interest for me, but I always forget to talk about it because I'm like, it's just a conversation that I'm having. I don't think to say
Right.
anything. But yeah, it's super fun. I've had some awesome people on there.
Yes, me as well. That's why I love it. But
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
those links will be in the show notes. Definitely take advantage of all of those beautiful free offers. I know that you're going to get something out of it. And thank you so much for your time, Beth. It was a really amazing episode.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love it. It was so good.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.